If you're anything like me, you love eating a plant-based diet and it makes you feel amazing, but there's one problem. The scale isn't moving. And it's probably not because you lack willpower or you're broken or your metabolism is shot or anything like that. It's more likely that you're falling into one or multiple of the 7 mistakes that I see plant-based dieters falling in all the time before they join Slim and Sustain. So 600 clients through the program over the last 6 years, just inserting my experience for a little bit of credibility here. So my advice carries some weight. Let's get into this. Mistake number 1. Now we're starting as we mean to go on with the most controversial one in some circles. There are some of my fellow teachers and coaches, would you believe, under the greater plant-based umbrella that are going to find what I'm about to share completely egregious, completely treasonous, and that's why mistake number 1 is cutting out fats completely. That's a contradiction, right? Because we've heard from the high carbers that the fat you eat is the fat you wear. They've rightly pointed out how 1 gram of fat contains over double the amount of calories as 1 gram of carbohydrates and protein. We've talked about how advantageous carbohydrates are, even when sometimes consumed in excess amounts, metabolically because of how they are stored versus something like fat. So of course fat, the clue's in the name, is the most fattening of the macronutrients. You know what? I don't even deny that charge. I don't even deny the argument that maybe we could say fat is the least efficient of the macronutrients from a fat loss perspective for all the aforementioned reasons. What I disagree with is just because one of the 3 macronutrients is more fattening than others, that means there's no benefits to said macronutrient, you don't need it in your diet, and therefore you should not eat it. It should be banned. I find this utterly absurd. I find it unnuanced and very surface level, frankly. And I think fat nutritionally provides so many benefits. You get so many benefits from healthy fat sources that you can't really mirror by using other things in your diet if you're not eating fat. Omega-3 being a prime example of this. And so this is why I am not an advocate, I want to be clear, for even a moderate, but certainly a high-fat diet. I just don't like the idea of maybe 5 or 10% only of one's calories coming from fats. And so I have my clients at more 15 to 20%, and they crush it and they still lose weight. And you know why they lose weight? The elephant in the room with all of this and the 7 mistakes that I'm going to share, because they're in a calorie deficit. Everything else is just preference, frankly. Some of those preferences are more advisable, more sensible in my opinion than others, but everything else is frankly preference. The biggest driver of weight loss, plant-based diet or not, frankly, is being in a calorie deficit. And the idea of cutting out healthy fat sources completely, I think this leads to more unsatisfying meals. I think this only contributes to the binge rebound that many people, the harsh diet and then the binge rebound that actually many high-carb plant-based dieters are falling into. The issue with portion control that I see constantly with people coming and joining my program from a starch solution background. They have utterly terrible portion control, and that is because fat is immensely satiating, and just having a small bit of fat on top of not necessarily every meal you eat, but some of your meals can make a massive difference in terms of calorie control and therefore weight loss in my experience. The fat you eat is not automatically the fat you wear. You will still lose weight eating fat if you're in a calorie deficit. Mistake number 2 is by far and away the most common mistake that I see keeping plant-based dieters stuck on the scale. It's following the just eat plants mantra. This notion of, well, I'm just going to clean up my diet. I'll get rid of a lot of the meat, a lot of the dairy, or all of it rather, lots of the junk food, and we'll transition to the more clean plant foods, whole plant foods. Fantastic, brilliant. And for a lot of us, don't get me wrong, this will help us lose the first 5 to 10 pounds. What you'll quickly find is for most of us, we're going to hit that wall at some point where the results dry up, and just eat plants is far too vague, far too imprecise. What I always say about just eat plants is the perfect entry-level paradigm to this way of eating because there's no overwhelm. You don't have to consider how much macronutrients, getting all the nutrients you need, micro and macronutrients, considering things like caloric density, portion control. You don't even need to consider any of that stuff. I'll just go in the direction of eating plant foods. Perfect entry-level paradigm. A lot of people, though, get stuck in that beginner stage and they don't make the rite of passage to being more precise and understanding with the finer matters of plant-based nutrition. I think this is a mistake. If you've got 30 pounds to lose and you're in that plateau, objectively we can say staying in that beginner paradigm is definitely a mistake. So what I always say, just eat plants, that's a direction, it's an intention, it's not a strategy. And if you want to get in the best shape of your life, you need something deeper than that. You might shift a couple of pounds, but you need something deeper than just eat plants if you really want to be in the shape of your life. Point made. Mistake number 3, I'm going to get myself into trouble with people today, but whenever I cared about that. Following the 50-50 plate, which this is difficult. I have a lot of respect for, and I've just spoken about the importance of having entry-level paradigms to clean plant-based eating, and I think 50-50 plate is one of them. But again, it's a method of calorie control. If you lose weight doing the 50-50 plate, which is possible for you, please understand I'm not denying that you can lose weight eating the 50-50 plate. I just don't think it's the righteous path. I don't think it's the safe, balanced, sensible way of eating a plant-based diet. And I also think you cannot lose weight doing the 50-50 plate. So therefore, how can it be this bastion of wonderful weight loss results if it's possible to not lose weight eating the 50-50 plate? And so again, this idea of pinning your hopes on preferences and tactics rather than prerequisites is something I see a lot across the nutrition spectrum, but specifically relating to the plant-based community, what I hear a lot is you need to do the 50-50 plate to lose weight. That's what I heard, Ryan. I have to cut out, we talked about this, the healthy fats. That's what it takes to lose weight. I have to eat 1 pound or 2 pounds of raw vegetable weight for breakfast. That's a prerequisite for weight loss. These things are not mandatory, but they're pitched to you as mandatory in many cases, or I don't know if they're pitched as mandatory. That suggests that I'm saying the teachers are guilty of this. Sometimes it's just people's poor interpretation. Again, being patronizing, but bluntly put, it's people's poor interpretation of advice they hear. They take advice and they take it as, I must do this. It's like, no, it's sort of a preferential, someone's just sharing different strategy. Anyway, I digress. The 50-50 plate, I think it's oversimplified. Again, I think because it cuts quite aggressively certain macronutrients, can be very unsatisfying. I think, frankly, we can call it imbalanced. And yeah, entry level for a couple of weeks to get you into this way of eating, maybe to start off the process of losing weight. But if you're not losing weight eating the 50-50 plate, it's because you're still eating too many calories. And you putting the shape of your plate into this visual guide, irrespective of how many calories you're consuming, that's not enough to save you from a surplus. Number 4, admittedly, I don't see this as much with my plant-based people because they tend to be more holistic-minded anyway, but relying on Ozempic or other weight loss drugs, even if you're combining it with a plant-based diet, I don't like this because honestly, I feel that it masks the real issue. That false appetite suppression for only as long as time as you're on the drug in question. What does that do for your lasting habit and behavior change? Does that create the quitting point transformative moments that I personally observe my clients really, really need to give them a more permanent, let's say, mindset change to where this feels like, I'm not going to drop the ball for life. I've got this right. And that's the feeling we want to create with my Slim and Sustain people. I just think anything that masks or can compromise the transformative elements of doing the hard work, I don't know, I'm automatically against. And I'm not saying the peptides have no merit. I'm sure one day we'll get to a place where the short-term and the long-term side effects are far less damaging or far less widespread. But right now, I don't like the idea of the uncertainty of not knowing the long-term side effects because these are new drugs, but also the short-term, the side effects, frankly, being reported are frankly horrific. And so, I think point made, that's my beef with Ozempic. I think anything that takes away from genuine behavior change, even if it gets the scale moving, is the juice worth the squeeze. Mistake number 5 is the perfection mindset, and this doesn't really apply to someone that's perpetually in a weight loss plateau. So if that's you, you can skip to the next one, frankly. This is, I'm inserting this point for the people that are, I don't know, the Monday to Friday dieters, or they are not always stuck on the scale, but they find themselves stuck on the scale right now. And perpetually it feels swinging between periods of being good, having short bursts of perfection, and then going off the rails because they have that first bit of junk food and go wild. Or their version of being good involves actually flirting with hunger a bit too much, and then of course there's this compensatory, I'm ravenous element to it. They have 1 to 2 weeks where the scale's dropping, they're feeling good, they're checking the checklist, of the Whole Foods plant-based textbook, and then it all goes wrong. They have these 3 or 4 days where they're eating 4,000 calories every single day and they can't seem to control it. This one is for you, the all or nothing. And I think there's many reasons for the all or nothing. I don't mean to just distill it as this one thing, but I've been able to, as part of my strategy with some of these clients, I've been able to fix a lot of this with a slight concession in the puritanism of whole foods, plant-based eating. And it's things like, that I've spoken about for years here, the healthier versions I want to caveat, but the breads and the wraps and the pasta, and it's concessions like, yeah, I'm going to use some maple syrup still, I'm going to use the stevia. Stevia's still natural even though it's manufactured. I've lost my train of thought slightly. It's the slight concessions on the meals out. Yeah, you know there's going to be a bit of oil in there. There are folks that are really trying to do the whole foods plant-based textbook. And I just really think in most cases, unless you're a monk living in the mountains, what I observe is this leads to burnout. This leads to spirals because you never learn how to bend the rules without totally breaking them. You never sit in that grey area where you do occasionally have a bit of vegan birthday cake and then get back on your meal because that's what we do, because that's the default setting. And instead you're just swinging between clean eating and totally off the rails. And I just think that small, and I want to caveat, small concession with 100% perfectionism to more towards like 90% whole foods, 10% little bit of flexibility. By flexibility, I don't necessarily mean junk, but that 10% flexibility, I've just found that is a far more sustainable path for most folks. Mistake number 6, thinking that it's about carbs versus fat. Again, we spoke about fat early on. We haven't spoken about carbs that much. By extension, protein, right? The macronutrient, as I call it, tribal wars that goes on between the 3 big macronutrients, carbs, fat, protein. People get so lost in it. But I heard the fat was bad. I heard the carbs and this. And of course, other nutrition communities are subject to this as well. But you're now seeing a real pushback on the protein thing in the plant-based movement, to where there's loads of people from kind of a gym bro, fitnessy, bodybuilder background coming to the plant-based community. And then now I think overemphasizing protein in this movement. I'm like, all 3 macronutrients matter for a balanced, nourishing, energy providing, healthy plant-based diet. All 3 macronutrients. That doesn't mean you need equal amounts of them necessarily, but all 3 of them matter. Let's get that out of the way. Right, let's get that out of the way. For weight loss, calories are the difference maker. But what about, I had someone tell me I need a vegan coach told me I need 35 grams of protein per meal. For what? And maybe you do. But if they've told you that you need 35 grams of protein per meal for fat loss, that is an absolute nonsense. Again, anything that detracts from the calorie point is really bad advice. This is a calorie issue. This is not to say macronutrients don't matter. This is not to say you should also consider macronutrients, but do not put your focus as though it's the key to your fat loss, weight loss success on macronutrients and how they all relate in your diet. This is a calorie issue. If you're not losing weight right now, this is the elephant in the room that you need to confront. It's the calories. It's not, oh my goodness, I've been eating avocado every day. That's a fat source, therefore that's why I'm not losing weight. No, calories. And lastly, but most certainly not least, the combination of a plant-based diet, which is already, I may add, a lower calorie density diet anyway, compared to other nutrition methodologies, with intermittent fasting to again create that calorie deficit by regulating all your food, reducing rather all your food to a certain window in the day to help promote calorie control. I see the attraction. In principle, this doesn't sound terrible. What I've observed though over the years is a lot with intermittent fasters of any disposition, whether they're following keto or a plant-based approach, this weird overcompensatory thing that happens because they go all day or much of the day, ironically at the times when maybe they most arguably need glycogen, energy, calories in layperson's terms, and then they're having this weird sort of top-up of nutrition after the fact, after their day is virtually done. And again, if you're in a calorie deficit with intermittent fasting, you will lose weight. But the point of this video is for people who are stuck right now. If you are trying to lose weight on a plant-based diet whilst also intermittent fasting, and you observe that it creates this weird overcompensation, and when you do eat, because you've waited so long to eat, you find it really hard to control your appetite, and you're going choff, 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 and you're thinking, but I've still done kind of good maybe today, right? Because there was I didn't eat for until 4 p.m. So I've kind of got this, right? I'm only eating 1 or 2 meals per day. I was told this is the magic pill for weight loss. No, again, as per previous rant, this is the calorie issue. And if you're under eating, potentially is causing an overcompensatory overeating effect, what good is it anyway? It's going to kind of net out maybe to a calorie maintenance or calorie surplus anyway. So I'm not necessarily here to say you should not do intermittent fasting. That's never been my stance. I think my default setting is, don't really like intermittent fasting, as I've documented here. But it's not to say that I don't see some value in it, some value for certain people in certain scenarios. We don't do it on Slim and Sustain. But that isn't to say I'm completely dismissive of it, is what I'm trying to say. My beef here is the idea that it's a must, and could it potentially be taking you again into under and overeating cycles that are still netting you out into calorie maintenance or a surplus, and you're there scratching your head thinking, but I'm doing a plant-based diet and I'm doing intermittent fasting, what's going wrong? You're still eating 3,000 calories, mate. You're just doing it between 5 p.m. and 10 p.m. rather than spreading it throughout the day. So if you've tried all or some of these, don't beat yourself up. Right, we've all been there. I've done a lot of these things on this list today, and actually a lot of my top Slim and Sustain success stories fell into these exact traps literally within days or weeks before they started working with me and had their massive breakthrough. You can really turn things around. It's not you, it is the strategy. There's a lot of bad advice out there. There's a lot of great advice out there, but people don't necessarily implement it. What actually works, if I was to sum up the secret to sustainable, lasting weight loss that gets you through plateaus, what actually works long term is a small, moderate calorie deficit, simple, repeatable plant-based meals that are realistic for your lifestyle, and a system that allows just that little bit of flexibility that I spoke about in one of the points, to where you think, yeah, this is real life. I can actually make this work. I can navigate social situations, weddings, birthdays, etc., and it doesn't have to be disruptive. It doesn't have to be failure. If you want me to walk you through rather exactly how to put this together, I've got a free 45-minute new Slim and Sustain presentation on my website now, where you can kind of download my whole framework there. The link is in the description box down below. That website also contains the application page for you to get all the details about Slim and Sustain if you're interested in working with me one-on-one. Okay, see you in the next one.